is the most relentless force for change in modern economic life? It's the modern, large corporation. It's also the least understood force in our lives, or, to be exact, the most deliberately misunderstood. There's a corporate myth which is carefully, assiduously propagated, and there's the reality, and they bear little relation to each other. The corporate myth is of a disciplined, energetic, dedicated, but well-rewarded body of men serving under a dynamic leader. The leader leads is always dynamic. His men carry out his orders or transmit them on to the minions below. This is the organization. The myth holds that the only purpose of the corporation is to make money by making things. It does well by doing good. It makes money by responding completely to the instruction of the market, and thus, ultimately, of the consumer. These are salesmen, but they are messengers, equerries, sent to discover the needs of their sovereign, the sovereign consumer. Paul A. Samuelson, the most distinguished economist of my generation, once put it this way: the consumer is, so to speak, the king. Each uses his votes to get things done the way he wants them done. We should think of the consumer, I believe, as someone very like ourselves, moved by voices within and without, including the eloquent outer voice of the modern corporation. The economist's consumer, which I've always rejected, we see them here in caricature, is moved only by inner self to maximize the enjoyments of consumption. He, she gives great thought to consumer choice, tests all life, all welfare by the amount consumed, and is immune to exterior persuasion. It is the myth. Not even economists believe it when they go home at night. Not if they look at television. We know as well as others that corporations influence government, influence the consumer. Only the textbooks hold otherwise. This is one of the few matters in economics that you can test for yourself. You can ask yourself whether the advertising that dominates your vision, deafens your ears, has a purpose. Caught up in this world, we become part of it, unaware of its influence. The myth, the instruction which holds that the modern great corporation is the powerless servant of the market, and thus of the consumer and the society, is one of the ways by which corporate power is subdued in our consciousness, and thus protected. We shouldn't be surprised. All education in all societies accepts, defends, protects the dominant institutions of that society. The sovereign, the Constitution, Parliament, the law, communism and the Soviet Union. That our economic education protects and defends the corporation should surprise no one. No two corporations are exactly alike. No two exercise power to precisely the same ends. The corporation in which scientists and engineers interact, IBM, ICI, will have somewhat different purposes from one like Revlon or Unilever, which survives at least partly by its skill in public persuasion. Some corporations measure success primarily by earnings. Others like to tell of their growth. Some speak of service and public responsibility. And if men speak often enough of their virtue, they may persuade themselves, at least a little, to its practice. There being no single typical corporation, we have invented one that tells something about all. It's called UGE. Our invention allows us to proceed far more easily to the reality, where corporation executives, as I've said, are custodians of the corporate myth. They are made uneasy by those who reject the myth. They regularly ask for assurance that a television program will not do so. Our corporation is Unified Global Enterprises, since 1954 known as UGE. Its history is the history of many firms, all alive and mostly thriving. UGE could be British, French, German, but since it's a source of both instruction and amusement, I thought it tactful that it be American, an American-based multinational. UGE will allow us to dissolve the corporate myth without too much solemnity, if you will allow. Then we shall look at a real, rather solemn corporation, also very successful. UGE, our company, began in food and beverages. It is now big in chemicals, hotels, missile guidance systems, computer software, and the leisure industries. This is the UGE product family, the product mix, the world of UGE. So we welcome you to UGEX 80, the exhibition specially planned to document the 100-year history of UGE.
and welcome to UJEX 80. I'm your hostess. My name's Cindy.
And I'm Gene. Thank you for visiting UJEX. In 1980, we'll be celebrating 100 years of the UGE Corporation. 100 years of service to mankind. And that's the theme of this, our centennial exhibition. Have a good day now.
This was the founder of UGE, James Glow I. He came to the United States in 1873 from Greenock, Scotland, down the Clyde from Glasgow. James Glow was a man of action and enterprise, with a vision and foresight to found an empire.
In 1880, James Glow opened his first butcher shop in Chicago. By 1890, he was running a sizable meatpacking plant. By the end of the century, Glow Packing was fully established, along with Swift, Armour, Cudahy, and Wilson as one of the big five of the Midwest. On payday, every employee was given tracts from the Bible and pamphlets warning against indulgence in strong spirits, along with his money.
James Glow and his son were famous, their church interests aside, only for their close attention to business. They prided themselves on knowing all the family men by their first names. They were also noted for the work they could extract in the course of a normal 72-hour week and 12-hour day.
1898.
Glow Packing fed our boys in the Spanish-American War.
The historic and bomb beef of the Spanish-American War proved far more damaging to the participants than the misguided Spanish bullets. But it has never been shown that the Glow cans were appreciably more lethal than the industry average, and no other company learned the lesson so well. Always thereafter, the company emphasized quality in its merchandising and advertising. Glow sausages and canned meats from those years are still with us today. In Chicago, it was said, the packers used every part of the pig but the squeal. The Glows did better. They used ingredients that had never been near a carcass. For generations of Americans, Glow sausages have been the glowworms, an affectionate nickname derived originally from their shape, the company public relations department has often explained.
We salute the fine range of food produced by Glow Food and Beverage for over 80 years.
Breakfast food.
Corn tassel,
Late barley.
health foods,
Liver extracts.
mineral laxatives.
A whole new ball game to greet the 20th century, launched by James Glow Jr.
These nutritious foods owed much to an economical range of vegetable products, intelligently processed and flavored, that went originally into the sausages. These included oatmeal, cornmeal, cottonseed meal, wheat bran, and it was said, although never admitted, freshly milled sawdust. The greatest of all was Ugol.
The ingredients of Ugol remain a secret to this day.
It's the oil with 1,000 uses, praised from that very day in 1921, when America first bought Ugol.
Wonder product, just one oil for all. Sunburn, crack, face salad, the name is Ugol.
James Glow Jr., by now in his late 60s, was assertive, autocratic, jealous of his power. He was very, very angry with Roosevelt. And he was once carried out of his plant by a policeman for resisting a government order on collective bargaining. As might be expected, he was unwilling to relinquish the reins.
But there was light at the end of the tunnel.
A brighter fortune ahead.
Ujola!
In 1932, the company bought the trade name and syrup formula for what was to become Ujola.
The soft drink that gives you the lift.
This could have caused trouble. The beverage owed much of its popularity to its highly addictive qualities. Cocaine, it is now known. So, acting out of his deep religious convictions and seeing the handwriting of government regulation on the wall, James Glow Jr. eventually dropped the drug. But by then the beverage was well established. For Glow Industries, as for many other firms, World War II was a time of great demand, great expansion, new horizons.
GIs march on C&K rations from Glow Industries.
That's the attack. Let's stand by the ones who are men of the guns and pushing the foe on back. Let's all be good soldiers and back. That's the attack.
The soldiers consumed, this time with no noticeable peristaltic or other intestinal effects. More important, Glow Industries was persuaded by an army in need of managerial talent to take on a shell loading plant in downstate Illinois. It also organized logistics support for Quartermaster's food operations in the European Theater of Operations, the ETO. Thus, the wider horizons.
The way was paved for Harold McBean.
In 1952, Harold McBean took control of the corporation.
A philosophy of growth, constructive acquisitions, the American opportunity abroad, professional management, a partnership in government, responsibility for national security, sound labor management relations, profit with service, technology at the demand of the consumer, the nation's host, nutrition for a free people.
All these phrases are associated with the era of McBean and the talented young team that he brought with him to the company from the Pentagon and the Harvard Graduate School of Business Administration. It was time also for a name that did justice to the new horizons.
Glow. Glow Industries, Glow Packaging, Glow. Global Industries. Global Enterprises. Unified Global Enterprises. U-G-E. U-G-E.
The 50s and 60s were the golden years of UGE. This was the New York headquarters. The dominant theme of every age is reflected in the grandest of its structures. Religion in the Middle Ages in the cathedrals, the emerging nation state in Versailles, the Industrial Revolution in the railroad stations, and the modern corporation in the skyscrapers.
That building is our signature. It spells one word in the sky. Huge.
Only the H is silent, McBean liked to say. McBean was the first of the professional managers. Arthur Francis Glow, the only male heir, after a brief experience in the company, had retired to California. His father had been called the last Glow. AF was called the afterglow. James Glow, on his death, had established the Glow Foundation for advancement of economic and political education and the essential principles of free enterprise. Much of the stock of the company went into the foundation. Arthur Francis sold more to cover the losses from his resort in the Caribbean, to pay alimony and property settlements to his two former wives, and for his own Institute of Erotic Art, a field in which he will be remembered as a pioneer in aesthetic achievement. By 1969, with the Glows gone, the corporation was 7th on the fortune list of the 500 largest American industrials. In the annual report in that year, UGE noted that it had sales offices in 62 countries, substantial manufacturing or bottling operations in 54 countries. McBean had done well, very well.
Your management now directs a closely articulated, internally reinforced, highly dynamic enterprise, which responds well to the capabilities inherent in modern managerial methodology and systems. Oh, thank you, Mr. Woods.
Harold McBean left UGE in 1969 to become Deputy Secretary of Defense. Company earnings, reflecting the favorable effects from the consolidation and revaluation of intercorporate holdings and other creative accounting, had reflected their 16th straight annual gain. The stock was at its all-time high. Since the Glow family had by now sold most of their interest and new stock issues had paid for the acquisitions, no individual now owned as much as 1% of the UGE voting stock. So where does the power lie? Traditionally, in an American company, with the board of directors. The members of the board are the voice of the owners, the stockholders. For UGE, the ultimate authority. This, too, is part of the myth. The average age is now 67. They meet for 2 hours every 2 months and ratify decisions that have already been taken and which several do not understand. None has ever opposed management on any matter of importance. To their ranks have recently been added a black clergyman, a consumer advocate, and a socially concerned nun. All the others were earlier selected by Harold McBean. Their election was highly predictable. They were voted in by proxies returned automatically for the management slate. The owners and directors have no power. Who then runs the show? For the answer, we go to the centerpiece of the Centennial Exhibition, the new headquarters built to house UGE in the 80s. It's 105 stories high, was the winner of a dozen design awards, including 2 that were funded by UGE itself. The new skyscraper will house the great and diverse and talented group of men that now, happily for it, is the UGE Command. Some years ago, I gave this organization a name, the Technostructure. Harold McBean, when he went to the Pentagon, was succeeded by Howard J. Small, Executive Vice President for Corporate Operations. Howie, as he is known in the firm, commands approximately the same salary as did McBean, $812,000 plus stock options, deferred compensation, and pension rights. Unlike the Glows and Harold McBean, Howie is not well known outside the firm. He's a 2-pack smoker, drinks on occasion to keep going, and were he a vital factor in the firm, his heart condition would be the source of the gravest concern. The Dow Jones wide tape would carry his electrocardiogram and his latest lung X-ray. In fact, no one in Wall Street gives Howard J. Small's health the slightest thought. It is taken for granted that power resides not with Howie, but in the technostructure. At the center of the technostructure are the chairman, president, executive vice president, council, a formidable array. The myth is of a hierarchy, all power coming down from these men at the top. The reality is of circles, concentric circles, with power flowing between them. And that is the corporation's greatest source of strength. Howie Small, as president, is at the center of the circle. In the first ring are his executive vice presidents and the senior home office staff. In the next ring are the heads of the companies and subsidiaries at home and abroad. In the third ring are those men whose technical and specialized knowledge contributes to decision. Engineers, scientists, advertising specialists, sales managers, dealer relations men, designers, more lawyers, more lobbyists, economists, controllers, and the men who understand the computer. Next beyond are the white-collar workers. Next are those who supervise production. And in the final outer ring are the blue-collar workers.
Let us now concentrate our minds fully on the future. Thank you.
In the inner rings of UGE, there is the power that proceeds from position, from rank. In the outer rings, there is the power that proceeds from skills, and from numbers, and from union organization.
Hiya, men.
There is power in every ring, power that goes with command, with knowledge, or with organization.
Where do we go next?
A New Yorker drawing by Charles Adams got it right. In the modern corporation, there are no great men, only great committees. We see, I think, the error in viewing the firm as a pyramid, with all power passing down from the top. What the corporation does and achieves is the product of the intense interaction between the outer rings and the center. But it's time to enter reality, to see the technostructure at work in a real corporation, Philips, the Dutch multinational. UGE is a composite and a caricature, both larger and smaller than life. For reality, we go to Eindhoven, a city of 190,000 people a couple of hours' drive south and east of Amsterdam. In 1944, it had its moment of history. It was taken by Montgomery's armies when the further jump to Arnhem proved the bridge too far. Since 1891, Eindhoven has been the headquarters of Philips. Our look at Philips begins also with an exhibition, the Evaluam. Here, the children of Eindhoven are brought to see the achievements and promise of technology in general, and of Philips in particular. Philips in 1974 was ranked 5th by Fortune among the industrial corporations outside the United States, and 16th among all corporations in the world. This was from sales of electrical goods and other technical hardware of $9.5 billion, employment in some 60 countries of 412,000 people. Here's an artist's conception of Philips. He, too, sees power proceeding out from a circle. Here in Eindhoven, the Philips presence is still a powerful thing. Workers in the firm still live in intimate association. They unite in music. The Philips band plays the Philips March. There are only two ways, it's an old saying in Eindhoven, to be fired from Philips: to shoot the chairman of the company or to molest the coffee girl. The first is recommended, but the second will soon be found out. The gloves have long since gone from UGE, and nobody is sorry. In the more durable Dutch tradition, there is still a Philips on the Philips board. The memory of Anton Philips, the founder, the old man, is maintained by this monument. The artist thought it wise to sacrifice form, and maybe also beauty, for substance. In Eindhoven, where the state does not serve, the company still does. Paternalism is not yet dead at Philips. Thus, the international school teaches English and Dutch to the sons and daughters of Philips International executives. English is to the modern corporation as Latin was to the medieval church.
Peter, waar werkt jouw papa?
In de Philips.
Rekencentrum. Ja.
Zo. Kunnen jullie een beetje aansluiten? Kom maar staan, zo ja. En een beetje doorschuiven. Kan je ook staan?
The company has encouraged the foundation of a workers' cooperative for those who have retired but who cannot bear to stop working. For whom the work ethic is too compelling.
Kan ook even staan.
Strength through work.
En dan moet je een beetje allemaal hier naartoe kijken, hè? Zo ja. Even opletten. Zo, even opletten. Ja.
And through their working life, the health of Philips employees is carefully checked. The more responsible the job, the closer the watch. Health and corporate health go hand in hand. But as James Glow's workers eventually escaped his righteous and paternal embrace, so it is in Eindhoven. The football team, PSV for Philips Sportsverein, still bears the company name, but plays on its own. Once the company housed and educated all of its workers. Now these tasks are going, or have gone, to the city of Eindhoven, or the state. Once the company instructed the workers as to its wishes. Now it consults the union. Once a year, sometimes oftener, it assembles the representatives of all ranks for discussion of plans for the years ahead. In speaking of the power of the modern corporation, an important distinction must be made. Its public power, its power in markets and in the state, increases. Its parental power, its power over its own people, diminishes. Philips, like UGE, is a creature of its technostructure. In this respect, all large corporations are alike, and corporate performance depends on the people who fill the rings. Who are these people? The corporate people are the new and universal priesthood, those who serve not the universal church, but the universal corporation. Their religion is business success, their test of virtue is growth and profit, their Bible is the computer printout, their communion bench is the committee room. Alcohol is under interdict as an intoxicant, but useful as an instrument of friendly intercourse and persuasion. Recreation is for regeneration of the business spirit. Sex is for better sleep. The Jesuits of this austere faith are the graduates of the modern business school. The Harvard men were the first of these orders, and they so remain. But now there are numerous subordinate orders. One trains here at a French business school, INSEAD, in the forest of Fontainebleau. The technostructure of the corporation is a design for drawing on the specialized knowledge of different fields of learning. In keeping with this, engineers work here with accountants, economists with marketing men, production men with those concerned with new product design. Though this is France, notice again the language that is used. English in a manner of speaking.
Which has been a high growth track now. Could they find a way to... And you say, it's an illusion.
The training is in group effort, and the word effort deserves emphasis. The corporation sets high store by work, long, intense hours, and a short life. And its seminaries do not favor the deeply reverenced leisure of the liberal university. They are places of business. Students work through financial negotiations, labor negotiations, follow out a decision tree. It's called role-playing, but no one thinks of it as play.
You're certainly not taking that 153.60. Coming up to 48. Should we push it down to 47.5 again? You certainly got to 47.5. I mean, I think that they've got to improve. They've got to be better than the other company, because the other companies...
Learning is problem-solving, and not an exercise in speculative theory. Following the original Harvard model, instruction is by the case method, practice in solving the kind of problems that all students hope they will soon be encountering in the executive suite.
The moment you've all been waiting for, the results. Industry 1.
The result, surprisingly little noticed in our time, is a race of men who are also greatly alike. They're not French, not English, not Belgian, but all slightly American. The corporation is their country. The first loyalty is to IBM, BP, Nestle, or most of all to UGE. The United States, Britain, Switzerland, Holland are mentioned only as the countries from which they come. Their uniform is a quiet suit, a careful tie, decently polished shoes, and the best of them can be dropped into Brussels, Geneva, or Indianapolis, and wherever it is, like a coin in a slot, they will immediately produce.
Immediate boarding at gate B29, please.
The proletarian, Marx said, knows no motherland. This has never been true, but it is true of his modern boss, and it is true of the International Civil Service of UGE. Since 1965, nearly a third of all UGE employees have been in overseas operations. Around half of consolidated earnings are now from outside the United States. UGE operates not from Brussels or Geneva, but from Paris, the intellectual, artistic, and quality consumers' goods capital of Europe, Harold McBean said when he opened their headquarters here at La Défense. Also, better food, more accessible women, and the Crazy Horse Saloon, a slightly frivolous minor executive was heard to add. He's no longer with the company. Harold McBean personally coordinated the worldwide operations of what, in his more thoughtful moments, he called his empire. He was everywhere by plane or helicopter. 5 meetings a week, 200 in an average year. Howard Small is also airborne, but his management team at home office keeps itself current on all operations, international and domestic. Information flows in to be processed by a large staff and kept immediately available in a comprehensive information retrieval system. Long before Howie decides, the decision has been carefully staffed out. Often, in fact, it has been already made. The modern multinational corporation is omnipresent. No place is too far away. UGE is as much at home here in Singapore as in New York, Paris, Brussels, or Madrid. Howie Small's people have recently won the Ujola concession in the Soviet Union, and they have high hopes for North Korea. The dangers of the multinational corporation have been greatly celebrated in our time. They destroy national entity, have power above and beyond the reach of governments. Even the executives of multinational corporations are concerned. When they gather for corporate festivals, they listen to solemn lectures, usually from American professors, on the problems and prospects of the multinational corporation, and these orators always view with alarm. I think it's better, on the whole, to be a little skeptical. No one can doubt the power of the multinational presence here in Singapore. The multinational corporations bring in the raw materials, fuel, consumers' goods, finance the production, make the products, and take the products away to market. They have remade the city in the image of the industrial West. But one wonders if this is all bad. Britain also made Singapore in the image of the West, and it was then called civilization. It also meant homogeneity, tennis, cricket, billiards, Scotch whiskey, the London Illustrated News. The impact of Phillips and Ford and Chase Manhattan is different, but who can say that it is worse? That the great multinational corporations can influence national governments is certain. But the power of the national corporation over national governments is usually greater, and that's something we shouldn't forget. Nor surely is the suppression of national entity, national identity, all that bad. Frenchmen, Germans, the British, all asserted their identity in the first half of this century, and the result was millions of people dead in the two wars. I suppose some believe that the European Common Market came into existence because miraculously after 200 years, everyone began reading Adam Smith. The wider the market, the greater the returns from the division of labor, the greater the efficiency of the international system. It's a lot more plausible to suppose that the EEC came into existence after World War II because with the rise of the large multinational corporations, tariffs, national boundaries had become, for them, a nuisance. And they had a better way of keeping competition under control because in a good many cases they owned the foreign competitors. So if France and Germany are now so denationalized that they cannot indulge their ancient animosity, cannot slaughter each other's citizens, should we weep? As to economic development, you've only to look around. It wouldn't all have been accomplished by the local citizens, industrious though they are, or the World Bank. It greatly helped that Phillips uses Singapore as a manufacturing site. It is always well to be suspicious of broad judgments. This is all good, this is all bad. The multinational corporation is a case in point. But Phillips does not take lightly the poor press which the multinational corporation receives. It calls itself a federation of national organizations. As the commercial jets bring heads of state to New York or Geneva, the company planes bring the heads of the 50 national companies to Phillips for international conferences. Once every year they come. They don't meet in Holland. That would emphasize the Dutch origins. They meet here in Ushi, in Switzerland, not far from Lausanne, to report on the past year, discuss plans for the next 5 years, trade experience on problems of management common to all. Assembled here are the heads of national companies and the top brass from Eindhoven.
I must say that we try to very much enlighten government officials about what we do, how we contribute to the economy, and I must say that this has a very favorable response because often these people do not know. They hear from these third parties about how bad the big corporations are, but when you bring them au fait with what we are doing, what contribution we do make, then often they take a completely different stand.
However it is described, Phillips is certainly not a simple organization. Heads of national companies are appointed from Eindhoven. Capital outlays, and therewith the design for growth, are approved there. Then the individual firms and these managers are given freedom to manufacture, sell, do their best, and so far as possible to make themselves part of the local scene. The technical departments in Eindhoven, those for radio, television, medical equipment, so on, are in constant touch with their counterparts in the national companies. They keep close watch over quality, technical performance, innovation.
What are you laughing about? No, yeah, still looking so, yeah.
For the United Nations, like Phillips, it might be called a federation, but it would also be a world government, and these men would form that government.
I went to Uruguay to be a manager of Philips in Uruguay, and my then boss, Mr. Hartung, took me there. And the company was not in a brilliant shape, to say the least of it. Then we had a week's introductions. We looked around. I went to know where the office was and stuff like that. And when he left, we stood on the airport, and he said, "Now, young man, here's 10 million guilders worth of you for you to take care of." And then he left. And then in the first, you get a kind of a strange feeling. But the challenge of handling your own company without having had to put up all that capital, being allowed to care for all those people, and being responsible for this thing is absolutely a challenge. And that comes in. It comes in already at a very low level.
At a very low level. I would like to support that call because only recently I had a meeting with a number of my juniors.
Corporate life is more easily explained than lived. To see more intimately what it involves, we come to California, to this Arcadian scene. The corporate ethic, as I've observed, is one of effort, acceptance of strain. A good executive is a good man under stress. The modern corporation has power, but it is power that is intricately shared. In the technostructure, all but the most elementary decisions require the information, specialized knowledge, or experience of several or many people. To adjust to the views of others, to accept their information and experience, requires a sensitivity and a restraint that many do not have. Thus, the Esalen Institute here in California. It is to show executives how to contend with the endemic stresses of corporate life, and it seeks to provide the sensitivity and restraint that shared power makes essential. Since 1965, major corporations, IBM, Burroughs, Standard Oil of California, Memorex, the Internal Revenue Service, a disturbing companion, have been sending their executives to Esalen. An executive tells how he learns to unwind.
I was wound up as a golf ball all my life, and I discovered Esalen 4 years ago and unwound, and when I went back into the real world, I was still pretty badly wound up, but it was more like a ball of yarn, and it was soft and pliable.
One executive was so unwound that he forever abandoned his three-piece suit, put on jeans, allowed his hair to grow, and remained here as a gardener. The world of the technostructure is one of anonymous exercise of power. Neither the psyche nor the sex habits nor even the personal hygiene of the great corporate executive has been very much investigated. But what Esalen says about the intensely interpersonal and competitive exercise of power in the modern corporation is very plain.
It's a question of winning and losing almost every hour during the day. The people who are attracted to our kind of work are win-oriented people. You might say that there is a natural force that causes us to be a little more uptight, perhaps, than somebody in a more relaxing profession.
So they learn how to overcome the resisting hand, gentle problem solving, how to relax, accept manipulation, management by others, how to play, escape the work ethic. Is it a solvent for the strains of corporate life? Well, it must anyhow be a pleasant change from the daily grind at Memorex or Standard Oil. And whether it works or not, it tells us much of the life and organization from which the escape is sought. One thinks of married couples seeking to achieve greater harmony and understanding, and rightly so. For in its closeness of association, corporate life is marriage without sex. There's the same need to understand, to civilize, to perfect an association, above all to persuade each individual that at some point, individual power must be subordinated without sense of defeat to that of the group. The large corporation is here to stay. Those who would break it up, confine its operations within national boundaries, are at war with history and the tyranny of circumstance. People want large tasks performed, oil recovered from the North Sea and automobiles made by the millions to use it. And large tasks require large organizations. And that's how it is. The question is, how do we live with the modern corporation? Allow it the autonomy it needs for decision-making, while providing the restraint that ensures service to the public purpose. The automobile industry is the metaphor for big business, the big corporation. And this restaurant in the basement of the GM building is probably as good a place as any to raise these questions. It's a kind of monument to the motor vehicle industry. The immediate solution lies with strong national rules to protect the public interest. And also, I think, with steps to make the large corporation less a private and acquisitive and more a public and social organization. Stronger national regulation is, of course, a trend of the times. Sometimes we don't see what's happening before our eyes. What a corporation can do to air, water, landscape, the truth, or to the health and safety of its customers is far more constrained than it was a mere decade ago. Ralph Nader didn't bring this regulation. The trend brought Ralph Nader. On reform of the corporation, there is a good deal less discussion, especially in the United States. It's an article of the Free Enterprise Faith. The General Motors and UGE are the final work of man and God. Other things can be perfected, but these are perfect. A divine hand guided not only the churchly Glows, but also the profane and secular Harold McMahon. Putting representatives of labor, minorities, women, the public on boards of directors, one remedy that is discussed doesn't appeal to me. The boards we've seen are without power, and so accordingly will be the people, however good they are, who are put on the boards. It would be better, I think, to abolish boards of directors in the large firms now that they have no function, and they could then be replaced by what we might call a board of public auditors, which would keep out of management decisions, but would ensure the enforcement of public laws and regulations, report on matters of public interest, otherwise keep the management honest, and it would also ratify changes in the top command, and in the event of failure, order such changes. You will ask then who would represent the stockholder. The answer is that no one does now. The shareholder in the big corporation is without power and without function, and we have to conclude that he or she is also obsolete. I would pay such stockholders off in bonds, have the dividends and capital gains then accrue to the public. This, you will say, is socialism, and that may well be so. But it is socialism because the great corporation, as it develops, takes power away from the owners and away from their representatives, and therefore it socializes itself. It also socializes itself in another and more specific way. If a corporation is large enough, it can no longer be allowed to fail and go out of business. The recent history of Lockheed, Rolls-Royce, Penn Central, Krupp, British Leyland, the big Wall Street brokerage houses, all affirms the point. All have had to be rescued by government, one way or another. Socialism, as and when it comes to the United States, will not be the work of politicians or professors. The real work will be done, is being done, by the corporation executives. On this, too, Howard Small, Howie of UGE, has also spoken.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to seek new areas of cooperation between government and industry. I am proud to announce such a step for UGE today. In keeping with the rest of the airline industry, UGER has been caught between rising costs and stable passenger revenues. Problems, I need not tell you, that are not of its own making. As you know, we proposed a government takeover of the line. Instead, in a constructive step, Washington has promised an increase in the airmail subsidy and an equally constructive support to our short-term debt refinancing and a similarly constructive guarantee of our new equipment bonds. This is the kind of constructive cooperation between government and industry that we should all welcome in a free society. It is our best guarantee against the march of socialism. Thank you.
We see that socialism, too, has entered the age of uncertainty. It could be one thing for UGE, something else for the average citizen or the poor.
24 hours a day.